Tonight's show is presented by Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC in Opelika.
Hello, baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Well, hey, everybody, and thank you for tuning in tonight. It's postseason time officially for Major League Baseball. Unfortunately, though, the Atlanta Braves not participating this year for the first time in feels like forever. The Braves are not involved in the playoffs, and there's a lot of pointing fingers going around on social media. A lot of people pointing fingers at Brian Snitker, wanting him to hang it up. Finally, a lot of people are pointing fingers at the front office. A lot of people are pointing fingers at the players. A lot of people are pointing fingers at Liberty Media, the ownership. Here's the thing. This is what I'm going to say. We're going to talk about who's to blame, what went right, what went wrong, and everything really in between tonight. I want to start by saying that 2025 will not be remembered fondly when it comes to the Atlanta Braves. There's no doubt about that. Of course, it's going to be remembered for a few things. We're going to remember this as the year that all 5 starting pitchers were injured and out for the season. This will be remembered as the season that the Braves started the year 0-7. It'll be remembered as the first time in 8 years that the Braves aren't playing in October. So again, it will not be remembered fondly, certainly not by us. And I fully believe that the Braves have the potential to take this year, turn it around, and move into next season, and possibly win the division next year and make a run in the playoffs. I firmly believe that, because I still think the team has the talent to do so when it's corresponded with additional talent to back it up, i.e. the bullpen, i.e. position players that aren't on the starting roster, and the right kind of caliber players around. Not to mention a shortstop, right? Relievers. I think that we just weren't quite equipped with the talent that we already have, because let's be honest, the guys that we have, Acuna, Austin Riley, Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, and so many others, Michael Harris, there's a lot of guys that, this is a World Series team on paper, right? The expectation at the beginning of the year was that this was going to be a year where we were once again in the playoffs and really making a push, because we were in the playoffs in 2024. I covered it. I covered the night we clinched. And as good as that felt, it felt almost like a down year, which we're very lucky that making the playoffs doesn't feel like a win, but it felt like a down year because the Braves had so many injuries. And that's the other component to this, is that the Braves did indeed have a whirlwind of injuries, and that cannot be overlooked. When we take an audit of 2025, when we look at 2025 and we actually look at everything that happened, we take an audit of it, and we start to point fingers, and we in retrospect remember a lot of this stuff. That's when you're going to see why the season happened the way it did. The big question is, who is to blame, right? We kind of went through that earlier. I've asked that question before, but never before on this scale. Never for an entire season. Normally when I ask this question, it's who's to blame for why we didn't advance in this series? Who's to blame for why we got swept in this series? This year, there's a lot of reasons to point fingers. This did not live up to expectations, and there's no doubt about it. And truth be told, I've been very lucky as a guy who covers the Braves on YouTube and follows the Braves and goes to the park and gets to talk to these guys. I've been very lucky since 2020 that they've been really good, right? In 2020, the Braves made the playoffs, right? They were eliminated by the Dodgers in the championship series in the National League. 2021, they won the World Series. 22, if you remember, they came back from 10.5 games back, beating the Mets, eliminating them, later being eliminated in the DS. 2023 was a phenomenal year. One of the greatest offenses of all time. Acuna wins the MVP, still eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. 2024, they defy the odds and somehow make the playoffs in the wild card. They earned that wild card spot, did not make it to a division series. And then this year, for the first time since I've really been on this channel, they don't make the playoffs, which is disheartening to say the least. But that said, I'm in new territory here. This isn't something I am overly familiar with. And I've never been a big fan at pointing fingers. Those of you that are longtime watchers, you know that's never been my jam. I've never been one to call for somebody's job, never been one to do that kind of thing. I have been a Brian Snitker defender almost to my detriment for a long time. I'd have better numbers if I was calling for his job every week, but I don't, because I actually believe Brian Snitker is one of the best managers in baseball when he has a team that he can manage. And this year, I just feel like that wasn't the case. But I got some problems with this season, and I've stayed pretty quiet throughout the year. I haven't done as many videos as I normally do because this year hasn't gone exactly how we would have hoped. In part, I've also been pretty busy with getting married and other things, but that's neither here nor there. I wanted to wait to do this video until now because I wanted a full season where we can actually diagnose some of these problems. Let's start with who's not to blame. This ought to go well. Number one, I am not blaming Brian Snitker for this year. Some of you guys are going to hate that. Let it out. Get it out. Let me know in the comment section how you disagree with me. But I'm not blaming him because I can't blame him on this. My comment section is regularly littered with people calling for Brian Snitker's job, hoping he retires at the end of the year. And this isn't a new phenomenon. This has been going on long before the Braves won the World Series in 21. It's been going on for quite a while. Sleepy Snit, you name it, I've heard it in the comment section. And I hear you. But this year, I don't know if you can blame it on a manager. No matter who was the manager, I don't know if you can blame it on the manager, right? The manager's responsibility at the end of the day is to create the lineup, choose a reliever out of the pen at any given time, the roster makeup to some degree working in tandem with the GM, and then overall team energy. That is the manager's total real involvement and his main job, right? So ask yourself, what lineup changes could Snit have made this year that would have made us win enough games to make the playoffs? Short answer, none. What bullpen move within his own roster could have turned this season around? Short answer, none. What roster move within the organization, not going out and getting a free agent or making a trade within the organization, would have made that big of a difference? None. The only one I'll give you any kind of agreement on is team energy, because it did feel like this year there were some question marks in that department, right? There's never been a question of, is this team ready to play? Is this team doing well? Is this team playing in the right attitude? There's never been a question of that over the years, mainly because this team has been ultra successful for a long time. This year, that was a bit different because when you start the season 0 for 7, that question's going to be asked. So if you're going to ask me, do I think that the team energy was on 100? No, I don't. However, that said, where you criticize, you have to give credit. And even after they were eliminated, to go on the 10-game win streak shows you something. I don't know what it shows you, but it shows you something. And if you're going to give flack for that 0 for 7, you got to give credit for the 10-game win streak as well. In the second half, I do think that the team somewhat course-corrected, but it was too late. It was too late to make any real amends. So you can knock him on team energy, but in terms of his actual nuts and bolts putting this team together, day-to-day, I don't think you can really flack him because there were so many injuries. There were so many just odd things, not to mention, Profar's out for the first couple of months of the season. Under the circumstances, I don't know a manager that would have been that much more successful. And I guess that's where I'll leave it. I can't blame Snitker for this year's result. I can, whether or not he comes back or not is still up in the air. I will tell you, and I've said this on the channel before, some of you are going to like it, some of you aren't. I hope he does, because it's not so much about the unfinished business narrative that's out there. That's all fine and dandy. I hope he feels like he's got unfinished business after a year like this year. I absolutely hope he does. It's more along the lines of, I want some continuity in the clubhouse. And unfortunately for those out there that want Snit gone, you're not going to have that continuity unless you go with a guy like Walt Weiss. In all due respect to Walt Weiss, who's been in the clubhouse for a number of years now, I don't know what the real difference there would be. And you're losing your veteran leadership in a lot of ways in Snit, who has been at the helm. The guys do love playing for him. By all accounts, that seems to be the case. All in all, I'll tell you that there's not a lot of them better than Snit. I caught up with Joe Torre at the All-Star game. That short is out on the channel right now, and he spoke about Snitker and how happy he was that Snit got the job, and basically talked about the job he's doing. And no disrespect to anybody in the chat or anybody that watches the channel, but a guy like Joe Torre, who's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, when he gives you that thumbs up, that means something. And I just got to tell you, for those of you that want him gone, I disagree. Now, if he was to walk out on his own terms and be content with what he's done, I wish him the best. It's nothing like we got to have him back. It's not so much that, but you don't want to necessarily leave him on a bad note. You don't want him to leave the team on a bad note. You want there to be a nice transfer. And think about this. When Bobby Cox left, the team was still pretty good. When Freddie Gonzalez left, it wasn't. That's what Snit inherited. And he turned it into a World Series winning team, along with the help of Alex Anthopoulos and the front office over the years. But he has led that turnaround. And it will be an end of an era whenever Brian Snitker hangs it up. But I am just not ready for him to walk out just yet. Because here's the thing. He was, as much as people want to criticize him day in, day out, he was the manager in 2021 when they won. He's still that guy, and I hope he's back in 2026. So, if Brian Snitker is not to blame, what about GM Alex Anthopoulos? This is one of those guys that has gotten a lot of fingers pointed at him. And I'll tell you, early on this year, I was very disappointed with the lack of moves entering the season. I didn't expect that. I really thought the Braves had moved to a point financially where that wouldn't be the case. But they punted on that, and looking back, that is, of course, probably misjudgment. I really wanted us to attack starting pitching. We lost Morton, who, of course, we got back later. Not that it mattered, really, but we lost Morton, we lost Fried. I really thought that we needed to shore up our rotation. I thought we really needed to bolster our bullpen. Neither of those really happened. And I couldn't argue with it because of the rotation that was planned. I mean, you had 6 guys that could be in your rotation when healthy. You had Chris Sale. Spencer Strider was still in the process of coming back on opening day. Spencer Schwellenbach, who had a terrific rookie campaign in 24. Reynaldo Lopez, who had a really good 2024 All-Star year. A.J. Smith-Shawver was on the back end of that rotation when fully healthy. And you had Grant Holmes in your rotation on opening day. Well, who could have imagined that Spencer Strider would be the last man standing? All 5 year opening day guys gone. Who could have imagined that? So as much as I would get on the GM, Alex Anthopoulos, about not doing anything prior to the season, bolstering the pen, getting any starting pitchers, no one could have seen that coming. Because let's be real, they were depending on those guys to cover innings, right? To make the bullpen better by having the bullpen cover less innings. They were going to depend on Sale, Schwellenbach, Reynaldo Lopez, A.J. Smith-Shawver to cover innings, right, as much as possible. And then once you get to the trade deadline, if you're still competitive, or especially if you're in first place, maybe then we can go out and get some guys on some deals, and maybe we can figure some stuff out. That would seem to be the plan, and it just bit them. No way around that. The planned rotation was solid. I think it would be solid next year if everybody comes back healthy. No one could have expected what happened to the rotation. That's really the killer. That's the killer. So if you want to blame anything, that would be the thing I'd point to. But if you want to blame someone, well, then we have to dig a little deeper. So, some of you out there will ask, well, why didn't he get anyone at the trade deadline? Why didn't that happen? Why would you put inventory into a sinking ship? The Braves weren't competitive at the deadline. I wanted them to. I was live on the air at the deadline. I was sitting here hoping something would happen because in 2021, I didn't think those 6 moves would happen either, and then they did, and we know how that resulted. But the other component to this, and we've talked about it extensively this year, is the luxury tax. The luxury tax matters. To fans, it doesn't matter, right? But to the organization, it does. So, could AA and the front office have done more? Sure. There's no denying that the front office band-aided the bullpen, strung it along to get it maybe to the trade deadline, and maybe you do some little moves here and there to keep it along. But the real plan here is that they were going to try to live within the constraints under that luxury tax, and try to get to the end of the season resetting that luxury tax. So, as much as you want to criticize Alex Anthopoulos for not going after guys in the bullpen, keep that in mind, but also keep in mind that he tried in the offseason. Of course, we found out that Jeff Hoffman was offered a 5-year deal, somewhere around $45 to $48 million, which would have kept us under the luxury tax. This was the big move. This was the big splash that the Braves were trying to go for. He did not pass his physical, which, by the way, with Toronto this year, his ERA of 2.17 in 2024 spiraled and ballooned to 4.76. His walks per 9 went up. His K per 9 went down. So I would say that the Braves made the right call in not going with Jeff Hoffman on a 5-year deal. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that the front office couldn't have made another move or two. I don't know that there were any moves that they liked or that were perfect that presented itself other than Jeff Hoffman. Atlanta and especially the front office probably figured that they could hold out. They could wait to the trade deadline. They could maybe wait and get something a little better at the deadline. And then the rotation crumbled, and the chances of that drastically went down. There was no reason for an aggressive trade deadline after that. And again, why invest in a product that's too far gone? So, if Alex Anthopoulos isn't to blame, if Brian Snitker isn't to blame, what about ownership? That's the real doozy, isn't it? We've talked quite a bit about the finances over the past few minutes, and one would think that I'm going to point the finger at ownership. Liberty Media has gotten quite a bit of criticism over the years. The Braves have gotten quite a bit of criticism over the years. You know, earlier this year, if you remember, it was announced that, hey, we're going to spend money on this parking deck in this new area, this new property, right? We're going to spend all this money on that. And I remember seeing the Facebook comments where it was, well, why don't you spend money on the team, right? Why don't you spend money on being competitive? That's a fair criticism. I'm not even going to get on to you about that. That said, it's pennies on the dollar, but I still get the point. That was the mood of fans in general. And again, I can't really fault them for that. But is it on the ownership? Well, it comes to how you look at it. It all comes back to that luxury tax. The luxury tax is always going to be a factor this year. I believed it would be pivotal in Atlanta's ability to be competitive in the trade market, in the free agency market. Anthopoulos really has always spent his money wisely, so the luxury tax didn't really bother me at the beginning of the year because I know that we got a guy in power that's going to handle it as he sees fit, and probably the team will probably be pretty good anyway, right? That tends to be the case. Well, not this year. And you can blame ownership if you want, but the real key is that they wanted to reset that luxury tax. They wanted to not spend that money and to reset the luxury tax so that they could spend money more freely, not only next year, but the years following that. It's a 3-year cycle. It goes up and up and up. And if you can find a year where you can reset it without completely altering your team, you might want to take that opportunity. And the Braves decided to. All in all, this is what I'll say about it. It's a smart move to, of course, stay under the luxury tax and reset it. The ability to spend money next year, if indeed they do that, it creates a better future. Hopefully, that's the hope. So all I can say is, if you're mad at the ownership, wait a while before you show your emotions, right? Because you may just have to wait it out. You may have to see what results of this, right? Let's see what happens this offseason, right? Who could we go out and get? Will we sign Ha-Seong Kim? Will we sign a couple starting pitchers, maybe a Dylan Cease? Will we sign those guys, or will this be yet another season like 2025's offseason? 2025 was a perfect storm of saving money and running into injuries. 2026 will hopefully be a season of spending money and staying healthy. That's what I'm hoping for. That's all we can hope for. But in terms of who's to blame, it's a perfect storm. There's nobody in particular. I don't think you can point the finger at Snicker. He's working with what he's being given. Alex Anthopoulos is working from what he's being given. Liberty Media is working within constraints to stay under the luxury tax. Now, if your opinion is we shouldn't stay under the luxury tax, we are that team that can be competitive at that financial level, that's your opinion. The Braves obviously didn't feel that way. So all things considered, I would say it's nobody's fault, which, isn't necessarily what a lot of you guys are going to want to hear. It isn't anybody's fault. It's a weird way this thing all came together. It's a sad year. It was miserable for the fans. I don't discount that. But I do believe that 2026 will be better.